when we say unpacking leadership to business impact pathway, and what are the components of that and how are they connected and how they influence one another, I really loved the way you talked about it, the way you talked about in terms of saying, hey, listen, we need to be thinking of, of leadership as the leading indicator to results, right? And then you also talked about how people management being decoupled from business impact. So once again, I don't want to give too much away, but I'd love for you to kind of elaborate on that so you can get everybody else kind of into that conversation, I guess.
For sure. Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest disappointments, I think, as I kind of became a manager, I was very excited, right? Was leading people for the first time. I think I got some messages early on that were like, yeah, lead your team, but really you got to focus on these business results over here, right? And it felt that the two things felt so decoupled. And I think even now when like if people are putting together their annual goals, I'll be like, all right, here are the 4 big things I'm going to do. And I'm like, oh, I don't quite have room on the page, but I'm going to squeeze this 5th one in there that's like manage my team, and it just feels so tacked on. And I want it there because I feel we're actually at more risk if it's not there, but I wish that it was baked in, and that this idea of being an excellent leader was the way that you accomplish those business objectives instead of, another thing that you want to make sure that is also on your goal sheet so you get credit for it at the end of the year. And I'm being a little bit cynical, but it just, when I look across the arc of my career, that's the way it feels. And so, where I have heart for is just, can we get them to a place where it's baked in? And even like, I love what you said, Martin, about, do more of this because it increases your impact. Like even those simple ties, because I remember I've had a similar situation where I've had that feedback a couple times in my career. And I think the first time I was like, really, I'm good at that? Like it is so profound to get feedback like that. And then to have it tied to the why. Keep doing that, because did you notice when you did this, you achieved that? And people don't always notice, and they don't always see what they're good at. And so I think those simple ties can also be super effective as we try to bring the two together more.
And the point of view that I have is that, frankly, leadership, leaders and businesses are two living entities, right? They're like living, breathing, and they have their own rhythm. They have their own kind of, way of performing, functioning, and they are inextricably connected. They are linked. That's the fundamental premise of, of what are the components that drive leadership development and business impact, right? And the idea is that one should never, ever, under any circumstance, separate the two, because if you do, then we kind of, we start seeing all this dysfunctional stuff happening, whether it's setting low standards, or whether it's not tagging it on as an afterthought as opposed to being the first thing you do. And Martin, you said something really, really, really interesting, where you said, when you look at those 30 objectives, they're either people objectives or business objectives, but never actually looking at driving business through people. And that's like, let me just say that again to see how silly that sounds. Okay. You have either people objectives or you have business objectives, but never looking at how you drive the business through people objectives, right? And if we were to do nothing else as a leadership development fraternity and community, and sit on the $400 billion that are being spent every year, I think every one of us who says we're leadership development experts, frankly, need to be ashamed about it, right? Because isn't this the fundamental component of leadership development? Is it's not happening in a vacuum. Sure enough, it's great to have the individual growth. I think it's fantastic, but ultimately it's all about business effectiveness too, right? And if we don't understand how to connect those two, then I think we're not even answering half the equation. I feel we're not even answering the question completely, right? Kind of thing. So point is that, as I go into this, very clear that it's, there's that they are connected. You should connect them. And frankly, there are roadmaps. There is a roadmap that allows us to do this, and we'll talk about it obviously as we get into the session, but that's kind of my perspective on, leadership development and, and how it connects to business growth.